Hold on to your baskets or any other body part in 4, 3, 2, 1.
The Nitty Gritty with your hosts, Marc Graue
and Deb Munro, a podcast with no boundaries that tells it like it is.
This ain't your mama's show.
This is the Nitty Gritty.
Yeah, there's some lady talking to me. My son, you'll love this. He has cerebral palsy, but when he calls and gets the person you're trying to reach is not. He goes, I don't even know why this woman keeps answering the phone. I don't know who she is.
Oh my God, that's so adorable. Oh my God, that's so adorable.
Over it's like, dude, it's just an answering issue. I don't care. I don't even know why she keeps answering. It's
that's a out of the mouths of babes, right? It's like my favorite thing about kids, because I just am such a kid person, is they'll be 100% honest. They're not trained to lie yet. They're not trained to be.
My daughter, we were once at a wishing well with the pennies. She goes, Dad, let's throw pennies and make wishes. And I went, sweetheart, I'm sorry, I don't have any change. I know. Let's throw credit cards. just like, really?
That's awesome.
Now they're all grown and they're not cute anymore. But
yeah, of course.
But it was that.
But that's the thing about special needs, though. They don't totally grow up, which is beautiful. They get to.
Oh yeah. No, he's a punk. Chelsea also. Youngest daughter, middle kid. Actually, she's not. I had taken her to the La Brea Tar Pits, right, in LA, which is all La Brea Tar Pits is all. It's where they show all the show, but it's all the historic, and they've got prehistoric bones, and down you sit through the presentation first. It's right on Wilshire, which is weird in the center of LA, but it's got all the tar and some steam coming up, and they give you the whole presentation, and there's bones and things. So we watch the presentation, we're walking along, she steps off the path into this stuff, and her foot gets stuck kind of this tar, and and I go, sweetie, what's wrong? I don't want to be bones.
I don't want to live there.
Really?
My favorite was Melissa was 2, and she was just that age where she was repeating everything she heard. And we got on a city bus, and literally we were the only people on the bus at first. And then we stopped at a warehouse. And when we stopped at the warehouse, it was a whole bunch of Oriental women that got on the bus.
Right.
And all you could hear was, oh, I thought you now. I said, oh, no, yeah. That's all you could hear.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, there was a moment of silence. And my daughter, just at the top of her lungs, Hoing Tang Wang To. And I'm just like, oh my God. And they passed her around the whole bus and just pinched her cheeks and just fell in
I love it. They did. My Dayton did exactly the same thing. We were in New York, right, sitting at the little table outside, and and Dayton stands up on a chair and goes, la la lee. And I'm going, oh shit. And she stops, looks, and busts up laughing, because it was like, I didn't know, what did he just say, fuck you or something in Chinese? I have no idea. It's like, oh God.
Oh my God, that's awesome. I love it. Oh man.
Well, let's rock and roll, baby.
Rock and roll today.
What do you think?
All right. Hey, welcome to the Nitty Gritty. I'm Deb Munro.
I'm Marc Graue, and God, she's the nitty, and I'm the gritty. So.
Well, one of us got to be something, that's for sure. I thought today maybe we could talk about the industry as a whole and its birthing, because it's actually, if people don't pay attention, it's a rare commodity to be able to talk to someone who's been there since the beginning, for the most part, of this industry. And then myself, I think I can really substantiate the beginning of the online industry. So you were a part of the actual, a big part. I know there was people before you, obviously, but they were a very small handful. Talk to me about the industry in LA and how.
Well, the neat thing, that was kind of a crossover. It's like I was right at the tail end of the Mel Blanc and Orson Welles, and I told you, Dawes Butler was my godfather, because he used to do a live puppet show at Channel 5, which I grew up there. So it very interesting. The funny thing is, it was much more of a select group back then. I don't mean that to sound elitist.
No, it just was.
Oh, there was only a few of us that could actually read copy. It was so heavy because they'd write it on rocks, and we'd have to ride horses to get there.
Well, truthfully, though, people didn't really know about it. They didn't think about it as an industry.
No, and in fact, it's very funny, because even my dad, I told this story before, as far as being a major detractor. It's like, what, you got paid to get talk? What kind of crap is it? What are you, an idiot?
Exactly.
It's like, you can't. It's like, well, you get paid to talk. It's just that you're talking about news and on camera, but
yeah,
but yeah, it was definitely a different field. elite, but very there. I think there was more of a camaraderie then between people that did it. It's as you know now, it's got very distinct camps. There's these people,
Yeah.
these people, these people, and it's like, oh, and which is really odd. I love how. Everybody talks about the brotherhood of voiceover, and yes, it's an amazing thing to do. We sit in a room, we talk, we get paid. It's awesome. But at the same time, when you're not at a conference with all the brotherhood and love and hugs and kisses and pictures and stuff, it can be very, very isolating, and it can be very
Of course.
like, oh, you booked that, and
Yeah.
nobody will say that out loud,
Do you
but
think a lot of that would be because, um, especially back in the day when there was no such thing as the internet, people weren't transporting their voice all over the world. So the competition became much smaller because the work was local. I mean, as
oh
much as
yeah,
LA, and let's talk about LA for a second, because I think a lot of people really take for granted what people sacrifice to live in a city such as LA to work. And that is a big hub, and it always has been a major hub for the entertainment industry in all aspects. But a lot of the waitresses in LA, for example, are all starving actors wanting to
all
make
have things
it,
in development. Yes, it's
right?
amazing.
And so and my understanding, from some of the stories I've heard, Mel Blanc didn't teach, and Mel Blanc did a lot of the voices for Looney Tunes, but I think a lot of the credits gave him most of the credit and not some of the other people that were actually doing some of the Looney Tunes. Do you know that to be correct?
Well, well, true. There was, I mean, Junie Foray did a ton, all the women stuff, and I mean, she did come into her
All the
own,
women
but
stuff.
not like Mel, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, it was
Well, it was a
interesting because Mel,
male-dominated industry, was it not?
oh, pretty much,
Yeah.
absolutely, and at the same point, like Mel would do all the Warner Brothers character stuff, and Dawes was over at, doing all the stuff over at
Hanna-Barbera.
Hanna-Barbera,
Mhm.
and very, very talented. It was a group that really was not overly well known. It was, occasionally, I mean, they would go on the Tonight Show, that kind of thing. The guys that had reached that pinnacle, I think when it first really started to pop open, not just animation, but in general, where people were aware was with Don
Yeah.
LaFontaine. And sadly, I'm old enough to go back. We did all those crappy Steven Seagal movies back, Out for Blood, kind of stuff. And the whole reason that Don originally had gotten a limo was not because he was making a fortune, obviously, but it was to get to session to session to session,
Yeah.
because that kind of, at that point, you were doing stuff at Fox, and then you need to be over at NBC, or you need to be at ABC, or you need to be at CBS, or you need to be over at Hanna-Barbera over on Lancashire, or you need to be, you were
Always
running
traveling for the
all over
work.
town. And
Yeah.
that was his way of getting to and not being total burnout. The interesting thing is, back when I was starting, there was still traffic, and they would go, Santa Monica. I mean, even when I moved the studio, when I first started, again, it was in a guest house, and then moved into a little building in Hollywood. But moving from Hollywood to Burbank was like, oh my God, I felt like I was moving to the boondocks. At that point, it wasn't what it is now. It's become very much, with the, media capital. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
bazillion studios and stuff out there in Burbank. But it just was a very, very different style of stuff. The cool thing too, though, at that point, there really was a camaraderie in that you would run into the same people.
Mhm.
And so you'd go to an audition down at the Voice Caster down on Burbank Boulevard with Bob Lloyd or something, and all of a sudden, you're running into the same guys, and so the camaraderie of sitting there and doing jokes and that kind of stuff, and you'd actually, hey man, let's go out and have lunch afterwards, that kind of thing. So there was definitely a lot more human contact, as opposed to
Yeah.
now, which again, your
Digital.
contact is based on a screen, and Zoom
Well, there is
sessions or
no
Zoom
contact
screen.
with auditions because you don't see each other or hear each other at any point when it's
and
all
and
online.
that's all of your auditions back then. You
Yeah.
had a booth director, if you went into your agents, that would tell you, kind of what was going on, or you would be at a casting director, and they would tell you what going. And some of them were very, very nice. Some, I will not mention name, but are still around, that were,
What's
slate your name. I said slate your name. I didn't say to slate it like that. Did I say to slate it in character? It's like, God, I like the wooden hangers, mommy. It's like,
Yeah.
geez, all right, but
Intimidating, right? Was it
uh,
intimidating? I was actually quite in. I won't use the word intimidated. I will use the word taken back by Don LaFontaine's agent when I got to meet them when he came to one of the first conventions. We were so
right.
honored that Don had come, and he became a celebrity for us. And I remember
Yeah, Vanessa
It was
and Steve Tisherman and yeah.
yeah, we were in we were in a casino, the Golden Nugget. It was just stinky, smoky. It was just an interesting location. Anyway, we got there. No one in that hotel, and that's the beauty of voice acting. No one in that hotel really knew who Don LaFontaine was at all. He hadn't
Right,
even done the Geico commercial yet, so therefore he didn't have a face yet. And
right.
so there was 175 people at this first ever voice convention, and all of us knew who Don LaFontaine was. But the
Sure.
rest of the entire Vegas casino didn't care, nor did they know. And when they walked in, it was like this posse. And she had this big fur coat on, and she just looked like very unapproachable. And so I very quietly walked by Dawn and I said, "Oh, hey, Dawn," just like kind of under my lip,
Right.
not much. And I was a coach at that time, not even just a talent. And she goes, "Not now." And I'm just like, "Oh," because my introduction to the industry was not at all separated at all.
Right.
It didn't feel like it was hierarchical at the time, other than, LA warning me about the non-union being a negative thing for the industry.
Sure.
And so when he went to speak on the stage, Dawn hardly got to speak. She spoke almost for him all the time, and I was so
Huh.
taken back
Interesting.
because we could tell Dawn wasn't that way.
Right.
He stuck around, he shook everybody's hand, he wanted to have a moment with absolutely everybody, but all our stuff was in the green room, my laptop, all my stuff for teaching, my purse, everything, and they wouldn't let us in. So it was the first time I got a taste of there was a hierarchy, but it
Right.
didn't come from Dawn. So I was taken back by that, what I would think is a bit of the LA competition, because it was very dog eat dog once it started growing a lot more. It was
I
very
think
fascinating.
it's, doggy. It's just once again, there's distinct camps. I was very lucky in the respect of having the studio, which was a very well-known thing from the start, that I was okay. It kind of
Yeah,
leveled
you
the
fit
playing.
right
It's
in.
almost like
Yeah.
owning a bar.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like somebody, oh, Mark, oh yeah, how you doing? And so it really didn't matter who it was. It was okay because it
Yeah, and
was,
I was a nobody at the time,
and
absolutely.
that's kind of how the whole silly thing with the picture started. Was a couple of people that I think I don't even, it was like Elliot Gould. It was a couple of old school. And how it started was, you put that, and then other actors would come in, see the picture. Oh, oh,
Oh,
great,
he
and they'd
was here.
realize so and so was
Yeah,
here. So okay, it's okay. It's
created a
okay to be here.
reputation, yeah.
You know.
Now, Don
So
LaFontaine, for people that don't know, created with a partner, I believe, the movie trailers, right? He actually created the entire
well,
industry
Don was the
behind
way.
it. Yeah.
It's funny because they credit Don as that in a world, you know, um, which he really had that amazing. I'll tell you though, another person that doesn't get a lot of credit, Hal Douglas, and Hal
Yes.
Douglas was a phenom doing the same thing. I mean, and a lot of color and tone to his voice.
Yeah.
But there's an amazing. There was a um, black gentleman. He's actually was Haitian from Canada. He was a confused man. I
Al
loved him.
Chop? No.
Percy Rodriguez.
Oh,
And
yes, yes.
Percy had the voice of God way before James Earl Jones. And in fact, Percy was the one that it's as if God himself had created the devil and given
Yeah.
him jaws. And he was just eloquent, and we became very good friends. And the thing that I was lucky with, kind of growing up in the bit, is that I never had that, oh wow, it's so and so. It's like it was, hey man, how you
Yeah.
doing? And so so you kind of became part of and then they would refer people, Don Pitts, the agent referred me a zillion people as far as demos and to get things rolling and started it, and was really instrumental in getting going. And that turned into, again, the Warner Brothers, and things just started to click. We used to have these phenomenal lunches back when at the Magic Castle in the Houdini Room. Dave Madden from the Partridge Family had come in, and we'd done a project together, and we just hit it off, and he became a very, very different. In fact, Dave was even my best man years ago when I got
Wow.
married and since divorced. But it's funny, there was a guy named Dick Yarmy, and Dick Yarmy was a character actor. If you saw him, you'd recognize him. And so he had a group of character actors that would get together called Yarmy's Army. right? And so they'd get together every Friday and have lunch in Hollywood. Somehow, I don't know what, they pissed Dave off, which wasn't that hard to do back then. And Dave got mad. So he said, I don't need it. I'm starting my own. And he started Davy's Navy instead of Yarmy's Army, Davy's Navy. We had the Houdini room at the Magic Castle. And we had that for 22, 23 years. And it was amazing. It was the people, it was incredible. It was Jonathan Winters and Robin Williams and Gary Owens and Dom DeLuise and Robert Culp and Bob Ridgely and Steve Susskind. It was just, it was magnificent. And I was the kid. I mean, these guys were all old enough to be my dad or and so I fit in and could keep up joke wise and stuff. And it was, it really became this magical thing. It was like you're sitting and nobody was, stuffy or cocky it just was, it was like a bunch of dumb, like Harry Blackstone Jr. would come in, right? Harry Blackstone Jr. with it. And he'd go, I'm going to do this trick. And he'd do the thing and he'd go, okay, I'll step out of the room. And you guys, when I come back. So when he left the room, we'd all go out through the other door, through the kitchen. It's like a bunch of high school kids. So Harry Blackstone Jr. comes in and there's no one there. It's like, really? I mean, it's just like, I mean, and it just, bad jokes and food but it was, the camaraderie was awesome. It was just, and we'd all go to each other's houses for, Christmas and birthday parties and John Winters and Gary Owens would do 20 minutes with a thermostat, being on a submarine or something. Everybody would laugh and it was great. It was really a fun time,
Now, at that time, was a lot of the work, I know there was a lot of commercial work, so there was a lot of big commercials and stuff with a lot of them. I know there was animation, obviously, but was it like Disney type anime? It was all like Looney Tunes and Hanna-Barbera, not necessarily the Disney, because the Disney went to a lot of celebrities even then, correct?
They did. The nice thing is that they would go to other people for not the big roles, but the smaller, the incidental stuff where they'd have you do 2, 3, 4 characters in the background. But yeah, Hanna-Barbera was always, that was always a go-to because there was always new things and a lot of new cartoon series. The interesting thing is that was an era where there was a lot of that. This was definitely the first video, I think it was probably one of the first video games ever that I still get stuff. What was called Hotel Mario. And I did the voices of Mario, Luigi, and Bowser, all three.
Wow.
And it was like, no, it's voted one of the top 10 worst games ever in the history of the world, but I still get, from the BBC, so did you know when you were doing the game that it sucked? It's like, oh yeah, it was like, yeah, this stinks. I mean, no, of course we didn't, but that was back in, good Lord, I don't even remember, mid late 80s. I mean, it was, and it was a CD-ROM, so that was just starting out, but the animation stuff was, and the commercial stuff, there was a lot of that
Larry,
still.
I think was another one at that time. Like
I did that also. Yes.
I figured so. I figured for some reason, I think we talked about that before.
Yeah.
Not on here, obviously. And so as that started changing, obviously then the industry started changing as well because the competition got a little bigger. People started recognizing that this was an industry. But what's beautiful about our industry is it does have a sense of non-invasion if you so choose it, because I think that Nancy Cartwright becomes a really good example where no one really knows who she is back in the day, at least.
Right.
But she was a big entity and no one really knew it. She was making seriously good money, but you could still go into a grocery store or into a bar. And that's the nice thing about voice acting, which a lot of people kind of get into it for because you're not seen. And
well,
so
the interesting, and
anonymity.
That's a really good point, because the anonymity is something, it's the be careful what you wish for, because fame is something that
ugly.
I saw that even with my dad, with doing news, where people, people would like, that was a big, and autographs and that, to me, it's like, well, I still, if I went home and did something bad, I'd get the belt, so it was like, it's just my dad. And my kids are the same way with the studio. It's like, I don't want to go there. It sucks.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny in that portion of it is very true. It's nice though to have that anonymity where you can go out and have dinner, or you can go, and sometimes you have people that recognize you from, that's one of the things with conferences, is that the biggest thing there is that a lot of people that go, it's nice to get, the kudos, hey, and meet
course.
the people and meet fans. That's why there's so many
Yeah.
cons, that kind of
We
stuff.
all want appreciation. Yeah.
And it's nice to be known for what you do. But at that level, I've got friends, celeb friends that it's like, we'll go out and do, and it's like, just stay in the car, I'll
Yeah.
run in and grab
I
whatever.
know.
Because it just
So
turns
sad.
into a crazy
Me too.
time, you
And and
know.
I and I think we briefly touched on this last time, I know, but I think it's so important that the media understand that just because you're a celebrity doesn't mean you have a right to know who we're with, who we're not with, what we do in our personal life. And I think that's a sad
But
part about
the terrible thing is, though, that our culture is based on that,
it is. It's
and
so
it
sad.
doesn't matter. It's like, the world can be going to hell, and
Yep.
Israel is fighting, and this is going down in flames, and there's fights here, and there's blood in the streets, and da da da. But guess what? You know what Taylor's doing?
Taylor Swift's
It's
at a
like, and
football
it's
game.
and it's like, really, and it's like, who
The world
cares? But
blows up.
I
I
mean,
know.
that
It's so
becomes,
sad.
and if you look at all the entertainment shows, those have been going for years
Yeah.
and years and years, and on the set of this, and it's the
Yeah.
behind the scenes, and
They
people
want the
love that.
dirt. They all
Sure,
want the dirt, and I find
but
that, like, I noticed back in the day, Meryl Streep and Dustin Hoffman were a good example, and actually Eddie Murphy, of people that were not in the tabloids. They were actually very, very they were living their own life. I'm not saying that they could go into a grocery store and not be recognized, but they weren't feeding the tabloids as well, and I think a lot of celebrities started that because I think some of us get in. I know I wanted to. I wanted to just be popular. I wanted to be well known. I wanted to be famous, I thought. And then when I had my first taste of doing Dragon Ball and went to my first con, I had a girl crying to touch me, and it was so uncomfortable. That didn't feel good to me because I actually don't believe in hierarchy. I don't believe anybody is better.
Well,
I think
it's weird too when you realize that from our standpoint, like I've had people, like a great example is like a big video game, and they'll go, "Yeah, that when you were doing this and then you were doing both voices, that was so cool." Well, we're never privy to the end product. I'm
no,
not a gamer. I'm an it's like I'm fat. My fingers aren't that damn fast, So it's like,
and we're
you
just too
know,
damn old. We have
so,
more
but I
important
mean,
things to do.
and I've heard people say, "Oh, well, you can't do that unless you play games," which that's BS because you have a director and they're telling you what to
Right.
do. But it's an interesting thing because people take that very, very seriously, and
Very
it's
serious.
weird. It's both flattering and very exciting. Like, wow, to have that impact. When you get, a note from a mom whose kid is in the hospital or something and dying, he goes, and he loves that kid. Is there any way? And it's like, God, of course. I mean,
Yeah.
really, like, the child is got, he's dying or something, and he wants something that I did. Really? I mean,
Yeah.
that, like, which is heartbreaking. At the same time, you go, wow, okay. And I mean, it's quite a responsibility. Then on the other end, it's that kind of weird where you're going, I just was sitting in a session in a booth going, rap, 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 and they were telling me what to do. And now all of a sudden it's this huge,
Huge
big,
thing.
iconic thing, and which
Yeah.
is wonderful, but it is an odd, there's a
Well,
very
I
strange
actually studied it a little
connect or
bit in a
disconnect.
way. Sorry about that. I studied that in a way because there's a talent named Kirby Morrow in Canada, and he does a lot of big anime. And I think anime is where the stardom came in more so because I feel like people loved Looney Tunes. People really take for granted of understanding what Dawes did with Hanna-Barbera and all the other characters that he did. He did so much. But there wasn't as much of a stardom there. I know that Dawes was very generous and wanted to teach and wanted to help people and was shared what he did, which is a wonderful gift to give the rest
Mhm.
of us that are still learning from him today, and introspectively. But I found this Kirby Morrow guy when I met him. I was a casting director at the time, and he was an okay looking guy, but he wasn't that good looking. And bless his heart, he's passed since then.
Oh,
So
sure, Deb,
no
play it
disrespect to
down.
Kirby. I mean, no disrespect to Kirby. But we were in this room, and when we were out in the public, girls were screaming to touch him, like screaming like it was Elvis. And so we were all in the room, and it was a bunch of bigger talent in Canada anyway. And I said to him, I says, Kirby, I mean, no disrespect, but I don't get it. Why are they screaming for you? Like, I just don't understand. And he said to me, Deb, they all laughed at me because they were all shocked that I would say that to Kirby Morrow of all people. But he said to me, they're in love with my character. They think they're in love with
Yes,
me, but they're
yes.
not. They're really in love with the
The
character.
interesting thing is that anime basically came to fruition right around uh, late 90s,
Yeah,
midnight. And the reason being that people in general, there was a whole portion of the population that was very disenchanted with everything. And it was like
yeah,
all the cartoons were very family friendly and da da da. And even the Warner Brothers stuff, even though it had
right.
double entendre where the parents would get it and the kids would get it, still was very, very, sanitized and clean and da da da. Where anime was the first thing that it was really cutting edge. And it
Yeah,
was it was almost like as a kid going and listening to, FM radio, or they'd say
yeah,
shit on the air and you'd go, oh God, bad language. And oh my God,
yeah,
the album version of Inagata Davida, or, something, ooh, like we
exactly.
were
It
so
was much more
creamed or whatever we
controversial.
were listening to. And
They had
anime,
to
I
clean
think,
it up in
filled,
Canada. They had to
you know,
clean up the animation and change our dialogue because they weren't willing to
oh,
air it.
sure. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And no, that was true with a bunch of it. I mean, they'd be showing, girls' panties hanging out and their boobs hanging out and and it was like,
Very
wow, really?
sexual,
And
very
I mean that.
violent.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. And that was like, but for that, the people at that age coming up, that was like, wow, this is
Whoa.
this is for me. This is now they
Yeah.
get what I want, and I
Well,
think
and look
that's
at
why
look at
that's
what was
become.
happening in the music. You had bands like Nirvana and the 90s music that is if you listen to the lyrics is very depressing. It was all about depression and killing yourself and blame everybody and it was sad. There was a sadness. So I think that was feeding a lot of the 90s children into that.
Now everything is motherfucker. Yeah, boom,
Yeah,
boom, motherfucker,
exactly.
motherfucker. It's like, where would we be without that word? Oh well. Anyway, sorry.
Now there's no filter. It doesn't exist anymore. Filters just don't exist. So we've lost that
Well,
wholesomeness, I think,
the
that animation
interesting thing
really
though is
brought.
you'll even look in the States, you've got, you've got, Nickelodeon, Nick Jr., Disney, Cartoon Network. Most of those are very, and remember, look, there's Mr. Squirrel, and it's very cute and, just very non-threatening and nice and sweet and stuff. Now with Adult Swim, with that block, they're trying to push it. It's like the Howard Stern of cartoons, and they're
Yeah,
trying to push that as far as they can, and even language
yeah.
wise. And it's like, I mean, there's all kind.
No
I've
boundaries.
had cartoons where it's like, fuck you. And it's like, really, that's okay now. And it's, it was a
Yeah.
whole version of Paradise with the kid blowing ball. It just was like talking about his balls and talking about and it's like, really, in a cartoon, where were those when I was growing up? Damn it. But it just, I mean, it's changed dramatically,
Changed so much,
and
so
even
much.
video games, the same thing. The amount of, gore, especially the big triple A's, most of those are a little bit darker,
Yeah,
and kind of stuff. And I've been very fortunate to be part of a bunch of those, but at the time, you don't really know. It's like, if you're doing, oh, here, we want you to do a demonic ghost. Oh, okay, fine. Which is an interesting thing too. Just as a little tidbit, always go through and always, I call it road mapping. Road map the copy if you're doing an audition and look and see if there's language. If there is,
yeah,
then bring that to your character. If you
yeah,
feel that enhances, great. But look at the script, and if there's a whatever, and you feel that does something, great. No, I've had people that go, oh, I never,
right.
I would never use language. And it's like, look, it's an acting job. So you're
Yeah,
kind of putting up a block before you ever get there. And
yeah,
it's like, they're not going to, our job is to serve whatever that their purpose is, however they want you to be. That's what your job is. If you're getting into this, your job as an actor or actress is to become what they want. So if
yeah,
that's part of it, it's like it's part of it. And everybody has certain moral things that it's like, I draw the line at this. No.
yeah,
But the problem, I mean, obviously, a lot of it, I love it. I always use the financial thing where it's like, yeah, let me see her breast. Absolutely not. $500, get out of here. $1,000, screw you. $5,000, no.
really.
$10,000,
Well,
no. I don't. No, I'm not going to do that. 25,000. Okay.
okay, here
I
we
mean,
go.
well, no, everybody sets that moral
Of
compass to
course,
wherever.
everybody
I'm
has
sure I
that,
will
right?
get crap over that, and
Yeah.
I didn't mean in that
Well, no, I
context.
don't. I think
But
it's the point is in the pudding though. We have we were at a place where Well, I mean, people have always had boundaries. So some people would not show, like, look at the film industry. The film
Sure.
industry changed incredibly so, where you never would see any kind of sexual scene on family time frames, maybe late at night or something. Now there's no such thing as a time boundary. And it's not a matter of if you will, it's you must almost show your skin in order to make this movie
But
successful.
the terrible thing is, I think there's a whole group and a whole generation basically that's based on screen porn. I mean, porn, it's now, at one touch,
Is
boom,
it
you're there. Where it
everywhere
used to
now?
be, gee, I wonder if I can find that
Yeah.
magazine, that my grandpa or my dad or somebody had. I remember my dad had his army chest out in the, garage. And if you open it up, it was like the pinup girls, like Betty Grable, or
Yeah.
something. It was
Of course.
totally innocuous. I mean, it was
Yeah.
like showing them, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
wow, look at that,
Thank you,
and it's
Daddy.
all, and of course, obviously, I think my mom had gone out and tried to scrape it off. So it's all, so it's like, why is her face all scraped up? But I mean, all of that stuff, and including, violence. I mean, violence is
Yeah.
basically something that now the problem is when stuff is on TV, everybody looks, it's over there. And that's one of the things that kind of create with a lot of people's points of view with things. It's like, um, I understand, John Oliver was on talking about the death sentence and how, that it shouldn't be. And and I realize it's a touchy subject and stuff. Well, I think you have a very different point of view when it's telling and you're talking about something as opposed to you have, an 8-year-old daughter that this guy came in and did atrocious, awful things to and killed her and stuff. I think you'd be the front of the line. I'll give him the shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think your point of view changes dramatically if it's affecting you personally. The
Yeah, that's right.
problem is with all of the internet and social media is that it's not a personal, it's basically there, but it's extraordinarily antisocial. And honestly,
Yeah.
what really
Very much.
drives, if you notice, which sounds terrible, what drives the majority, not all, and I know I get flack over this too, but the majority, what drives the social media sites is anger.
Yeah.
It's like coming on
Negativity,
and going,
period.
and I'm
Yeah.
I'm astounded at
Controversy and
people that go,
negativity.
"Hey, it was great. I had, this for dinner. I can't believe you ate that shit. What's the matter
Yeah.
with you? Why
Yeah.
would you eat?" And it's like somebody's eating. I had a whole big conversation. I think I told you before. I went up for my grandson's fourth birthday in Philadelphia. And I just said, hey, I took a picture of Pat's and Geno's. If you've ever been to Philly, those are on opposing corners, the Philly cheesesteak
Yeah,
place.
we did talk
And a
about
guy goes, yeah, well, that's for tourists. And I said, well, I know my daughter's lived over on Tasker for over 20 years. The place there is Frank. That's bullshit. I've never even heard of that. I
yeah.
don't know what you're talking. And went off on this whole tangent. And finally, it was just like, yeah, well, obviously she's hanging out with the wrong fucking crowd, And of
Yeah.
course, as a dad, it's like, hey, I'm going to jump on a
Picture,
plane and come
man.
up and let's talk about it, Jerry. And then it's like, this is ridiculous. Finally, I just said,
Sad.
really? So we're going down this road. And then the original comment was over my 4-year-old grandson's birthday. And this is
Yeah.
where it went. Really?
Just
You
everything's
know,
changed to this place of, um, which people I'm sure have heard a million times, but people are saying things they would normally never say to your face
oh, sure.
because they're
And
behind this mask, and everybody lives off of what the controversy is versus all the positive things that get sometimes
well,
very
and
little
and
kick.
what's sad too is that socially, you actually, you gravitate towards people that, have similar interests, kind of
Yeah.
similar thing, maybe age-wise, points of view, et cetera. The problem is with the internet, that's all you do. And if somebody doesn't agree, they delete them, delete,
Boom.
delete, delete,
Yeah.
delete. So you're not getting, and it doesn't mean that, if you're a hardcore Biden fan that somebody mentions something Trump, okay, then you don't let, but trying at least, doesn't mean you're going to agree,
Yeah,
but at least
exactly.
go, oh, okay, wow,
And it gets very
that doesn't,
debative and very combative very
oh,
quickly, and
combative. That's just
people
it. It's
just
not
get
debative. It's
ridiculous
absolutely
with so let's go back to actually
sure.
swears for a moment and nudity, because I think, like, for me, I know I'm touching your funny buttons.
Hang on.
For me personally, I'm not I like I don't I'm not a nudist by any means, and no one's probably ever going to see my body parts except for my spouse. However, it's not that I'm against it. It's just I don't feel a need for it. That's all. But
Sure,
I have a different belief in it, even though I don't express it. And my belief is, as I think we all know as a fact, we're just all born naked. It's just we've decided at
sure.
some point to put clothes on. So those who judge someone who's naked, I think, is silly. I think it's about the intention. that is judged. So swears and nudity, much the same. It's
I
the
think
intention
too,
behind that that makes that swear a bad word. A swear itself is just a word. It's just a freaking word.
but that
And people get
entire
so
thing,
offended. But if I say the word fuck and I say it in a oh fuck, 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 fuck. Now there are some girls who will judge me for using the F word because I'm a girl. And for some reason, there's some rule that I'm not allowed to be human.
God,
But
you're
it's
such a
really not the
slut,
word fuck
Deb.
that's bad. It's the
I get it.
intention, right? It's the intention behind that that I'm putting in. Or if I'm going to be nude, it's
Well,
look at me versus, hey, I'm just nude.
for
Get over.
those who are not familiar with George Carlin, he had a fantastic bit that he did with the word fuck, and he goes,
Yeah.
people go, "Oh my God, it's so bad, it's so fuck, oh geez, nobody say."
Yeah.
And he goes, "It's natural because everybody fucks." He goes, "But like killing someone is perfectly fine. It's like,
I
oh, that's you
know.
talk about that, it
So
shows it on."
true.
And he goes, "What if you transcribe the two words?" He goes, "Sheriff, they're trying to fuck Billy over in the saloon." He goes, "If you're not out of town by sunset, we're gonna fuck you." And it was a very funny bit. I'm no
Yeah.
tasteless, excuse me. So, but it is true. The interesting thing now is that it seems what's happened is people assume, whoever the powers that be, that you need to mandate everything. And I understand. And a great example. I know this is a touchy. I'm not a black individual. I've got lots of friends, and I know that, well, that's really a contrived, stupid thing to say. But if you see it's very bothersome to me when you see copy must be African American. A lot of people are not aware that the Academy Awards changed their basically the rules basically that if you join, there has to be, I believe it's 20% quote unquote underrepresented people within a script. I get that, but at the same time, why
Yeah.
are you putting a limit? It's like, and somebody
Yeah.
was talking about, The
That's
Godfather.
true.
He goes, well, what am I supposed? How am I? It's a bunch of Italian guys. It's
Yeah.
based on, and so but as actors and actresses, to me, our job, and in this case, it's just your voice.
Yeah.
But you're telling stories. That's what we do. We're telling,
Yeah.
and if you're a good storyteller, you're going to work a lot.
Yeah.
But it's weird when it must be this or must be
In any capacity.
non-binary or must be
And
this or that
let's
and I
talk about
get
that.
it.
Let's talk about that going to the history of voice acting,
Mhm.
because I know for sure in Canada, so I guarantee you it was the same in the States, there wasn't enough multicultural talent
Sure.
to choose from because East Indians was against their culture for some reason. I know I had a student who had to hide from his father to come to my classes because he was judged that that wasn't okay in their culture. And I think it was more about kind of like what your dad said, you got to make real money. Maybe. I don't know. I don't really know his
But
reasons,
the
but I
thing
know he
is,
said it was against his culture. So he had to hide it. So it was
but
hard
see,
to get
again,
someone who was
and
East
not being, again, a person of color, a minority, not being gay. I understand that if it's hurtful, I have to stop and wonder, okay, well, what about this was hurtful? In other
Yeah,
words, there's certain
for
things
sure.
that I've watched. I'll give you a great example. Was Amos and Andy, the show, and now it was entirely different. Now I'm not talking about white guys doing putting on black. That's bullshit.
Well, you go into that,
I
that's
could, I
again
could,
hidden intention, right?
and I see
Mocking
where
it.
that's very
Yeah,
offensive.
mocking is not good.
But
Yeah,
the TV show I remember watching as a kid, and it was two black gentlemen, and I loved it. And it was like All in the Family, but black guys, and
yeah,
it was one. But I never ever as a child thought, oh, it's black guys. It was just like, oh no, it's a fun show. I love these guys. It's great. There
yeah,
was Amos, there was Andy, there was Catfish, all of the Kingfish. I mean, these
yeah,
guys were cool, and I mean, I loved them, and it wasn't. And I know people go, well, you mother, it's like, and I'm not trying to say that I understand that it was okay. I just mean that was I never interpreted it that way
yeah,
until it was told to me that that's how you have to interpret, and then
exactly.
it was like, oh.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, but I still didn't see the. I mean, I understand it's entirely different. It's the same thing as malicious, like a woman being assaulted or a woman being stupid. I mean,
yeah,
it's like, it's like, well, I went up to his room at 2 a.m. Well, it's like, well, what do you think is going to happen?
yeah,
I mean, or at least the possibility, as opposed to the guy jumps him on and actually physically assault. Well, that's a whole different beast, and
yeah,
you should be thrown in jail forever. I
yeah.
mean, that's
Completely different
but
circumstance.
there's certain things that I don't. it's like sometimes I think we're trying too hard. And I think what I guess the point is, I think what's happening is sometimes you're creating a wedge where there isn't one. And again, I mean, in other words, you don't want to go and offend somebody and have them be upset at you. I'm not, and
Of course.
it's, but I didn't. I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to piss you off or hurt you or anything.
Yeah.
That was not the intent at all. And so once again, the acting portion, you're taking on a character. So
Yeah.
like you said, it's not you, like you guys said, it has nothing to do with me. It's the character that I'm
You're
playing.
doing it.
And
Yeah.
as an actor or actress, that's just what you're playing.
And let's face it, I know at least some of my first experiences around professional talent. Again, I traveled everywhere to get training because there wasn't any in Canada really much. And so as I did it, I learned that we all love to break out in accents and funny characters,
Sure.
chipmunks, toads,
Oh
British
yeah. Yeah.
accents, any kind of dialect accent, and it wasn't a mockery. It was actually fun to do, and it still is, and I will never stop
Sure.
doing that
Well, I
because
remember we did
I
a session at the studio for one of the Swan Princess movie, and John Cleese came in, and this is crazy. John Cleese, and they have him playing a French frog. Well, it's John Cleese.
yeah,
He's doing that very,
yeah,
and it's like,
exactly.
well, I'm sure a Frenchman would find that offensive,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
guess. I don't, but why? It's just, it's funny. It's
well,
not,
it's just like with the British dialect, right? A lot of people in Europe were very, insulted by a lot of the British dialects coming out here because they maybe like mine, for example, is a generic British accent. Not that there's such a thing, but for me it is because I did not study whether it's Cockney, whether it's this, and so it's just a fun a fun, I think, in a sense, compliment to the nationality, whatever it is, because we enjoy it. That's the bottom line.
well, I just, the
We're
thing
not
is,
knocking it down.
it's
We're not
like,
derogatorily turning it
you
into
or I
something bad
booking a
thing.
job doing that it's like you were in the
It's
right
fun.
time, the right place, and it just happened
Yeah,
to work.
exactly.
It's like doing the Pirates of the Caribbean. It's not like there's not 9 million guys out there that can do, the pirate thing.
Yeah,
It just happened to fit what they were looking for,
yeah.
and it did it. Now, I'm sure if it's, whether that be a little twinge of Irish and a little bit of this and that in there, and it's like I'm surprised there wasn't the Anti-Defamation Pirate League that came after me. That
I'll
or
never
so, but
forget
and
Pat Fraley said to me one time because I got scared to do accents at one
mhm.
point because I didn't want to be judged. When we did, when Pirates of the Caribbean came here, I booked a few pirates on that job, and we did the job, but Canada lost it because there wasn't enough authentic British accents. They weren't liking all the mockery, and I got lucky to be one of the ones they really liked, which is yay for me. But they moved it. They didn't keep it here for that exact reason. Now, Pat Fraley said to me one day, he goes, "Deb, there's no such thing as an authentic accent anywhere anymore." And I thought that's a really good point. We're all an amalgamation of, you might be from Europe, but your dad might be from Ireland and your mom might be from somewhere else. And so
Well,
we are
there's
an
that, and
amalgamation.
it's also what they are specifically wanting. And
Yeah,
again,
of
it's
course.
all based on the client and the acting job. Like
Yeah.
on this thing with that, it was like, so if you're doing originally, you would start off a bit like that. That's got a little, now that's almost like Robert Easton used to do in Treasure Island.
Yeah.
Come here, young Jim. That kind of feel. Well, that's not what they wanted to hire up like a hair or he's drunk and you got 20
Dudley Moore.
and so, but I mean, that's what they
Yeah.
wanted, which is a whole different kind of feel. Now, obvious, and I've had, oh boy, I know a lot of trouble. Was doing a session years ago. It was for that company, and they asked, "Can you do a Cherokee Indian?" I do have Cherokee, but we're not even going to go down that road. That's fine. And so it was very, and it was a very respectful. And I got so much. It was like it's white people like you that are decimating the American. And it was like,
Aw,
and it's like
I
wasn't
actually
this
am
wasn't
Cherokee,
mean.
thanks.
Well, yeah, but that had nothing to do. It's
Right.
like I didn't even go down that road. It's
Yeah, of
like it's
course.
not. It wasn't. And then finally, it turned into look. I'm in a live session when you're on the line. I mean, am I going to say no?
Yeah,
I mean, it's like sure. I mean, my job is hey,
exactly.
whatever you guys want. I
You didn't
sure.
write it, you didn't decide it. And then
And
let's go
but it
back to
wasn't meant. And I know people go, well, you should have thought. It's like stop it in
yeah,
the heat of the moment when you're in that kind of thing. You don't go, No, I'm not. It's like, come on, really?
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't, and it's not malicious. It's not like
And
they're
if
saying,
and
well,
if
here, say this word, or it's like, no,
yeah.
I'm not going to do that. You're out of
And
your mind.
if we backtrack again, back in the day, there wasn't a lot of people, especially native culture, there wasn't a lot of people voicing. So where are they going to get them? We had back when I was casting, um, we had a film shoot. We needed a lot of Native Canadians, if you will, Aboriginal Canadians, and we went right to the reserves begging them, like, here's $500 a day, please and they wouldn't. They didn't show up for call times. I'm not saying that generically. I'm just saying that we had a hard time getting the
Oh,
authenticity.
sure.
And I think the same thing was in voice acting. There was hardly any East Indians voicing. There was hardly any African Americans voicing. There was hardly any Europeans in the States or in Canada voicing.
But I
So
think what
where do you get
happens,
that from when there isn't an internet yet? And
and
so
what
that's what
happens
started that.
too, is that when it becomes that, then you feel very walking on eggshells, like,
I
I could
know.
do it, but okay, no, I remember this is as a kid. I remember we had a housekeeper, Mrs. Wilson. She was a Black woman. I loved her dearly. And I remember one time at dinner, I very loudly went, Miss Wilson, how come you're Black? And my parents went, oh my God. And she just, without missing a lick, she went, well, honey,
Explained it.
God left some of us in the oven a little bit longer. And it was the quick, and
Awesome.
as a
Yeah,
kid,
that's a great analogy.
I went, oh, okay. And
Okay, got that.
it never crossed my mind again. It
Yeah.
was like, cool, okay.
And we were talking earlier about the
I
kids of
loved
our
her.
own
She was a
kids,
family member. I mean,
right?
it was never even a
Wasn't
thing.
about a color. And
No, it was just
I
an
had the
innocent
same thing.
question.
I had the same thing with my daughter. But in this case, let's use weight for a second. A guy gets on the train. We're sitting there, and he walks by, and she goes, "Mommy, why is he so fat?" And I was like, "Oh boy, oh boy." But instead of handling it so poorly, which is I think what some of us can do, and taking it as a bad thing, it's, oh, honey, okay, you can teach your children to say it in a nicer way. Obviously, it's not, but the kids are innocent. They're being innocent and they're being truthful to their truth. And so we can learn from that as well. Obviously, tact is important for a lot of us, but I
Sure.
think it's dumb for us to pretend that there isn't this conversation or this realization or how you see something. Instead of pretending, ask questions, because
Well,
people
that,
go into
and
it.
not
They
be
don't want to be treated
so much
separately.
on edge. I mean, I feel sometimes
So
like
bad.
you're looking, especially online, you're looking for a fight, and it's like none of
Yeah.
this. It wasn't meant that way. I'm sorry, there was nothing malicious in this. I didn't. You're not using a terrible word that's complete. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just
Exactly.
that's
Yeah.
in not. It's not malicious. It's not mean. It's not like you're pointing someone out. It was just like, well,
Yeah.
this was just a gig. I'm sorry. I was like, wow, I had no idea. And they go, well, that's about, you need to be more sensitive. And it's like, but it's an acting job.
I know,
I'm
it's
not,
not
when
real.
I'm thinking about the character and what that is and whatever it is that where you are in the scene and all of that kind of stuff and what the director wants. I mean, it's not really run, and there's, well, that should run through your mind. It's like, but that's not part of how I,
Yeah, we're
if
just
that's
involved.
running through your mind, I say, oh no, better
Well,
not do, oh,
it's built
and then
on
it's
stereotypes. The entire voicing acting industry is built on stereotypes, and there's
pretty
a need
much,
for that. There's a need for that. So let's go back then,
yes.
because now, as a present, now there is enough nationalities to choose from. And for the
Mhm.
first time ever in these last couple of years, accents are actually really a good thing, where they never used to be. It used to be I would have to train students, especially, and including myself, to speak American. And there's no such thing as one American accent, but there seems to be this generic American white sound.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I had to work very hard to get rid of my Canadianisms. But
Mhm.
now there's room for thick accents, and that's a beautiful thing. So let's backtrack as to why that even happened and go into, so LA was a big, huge market. New York, I'm sure, was as well. And I think Chicago was also a big market at the time.
Mhm.
Now internet comes in, and then this non-union world comes in. And before that, everything was pretty much union, I believe. And it was a
Where
good
that
substantial
really,
budget.
really started was about 2000, with the pay to plays,
Yeah, pay to play.
especially with
And
voices.com.
Voice One Two
And
Three started it. So I just
but
want to give
that's
the
that's kind of where people that could, God, my mom said I've got a great voice, and you
Yeah.
could pay $400 and go on there, and now you're doing stuff and start out. I think the interesting thing is with Screen Actors Guild at that point, I think kind of poo-pooed that whole thing. Well,
Yes.
those are a bunch of not talented, they're non-union, they're not, and of course, having no idea what that was going to become. Basically, same situation as new media.
Yeah.
Now everything is new media. They're really, as far as network, there's not a lot of that. I mean, you still got ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox, but Cartoon Network, yeah, kind of. But a lot of the time, what they'll do is first run there and then bop it over to
Especially channel.
Prime, and then you're back to the streaming rates, which are way low. Nobody knew what it was.
Yeah.
And the same thing with this. I mean, I think they threw that away, realizing it's not. And the whole thing with that non-union is fine. That's where everybody started.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's not
that's true. But I think the union was more present at that time. However, I
Well,
think
the
as
interesting
well
thing
the
back then
naivety
was two unions. It was AFTRA
and
and
SAG.
Screen. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and
they
I
were
think the
separate.
naivety then was because that's my world now where I step in because Alex, when he created Voice 123, his wife wanted to be a voice actor, but she didn't live in a major market, much like myself. I didn't live in a major market. I lived in bumfuck Saskatchewan. Sorry, I lived in Saskatchewan, I should
So you
say.
could have married
And
David
Saskatchewan was
Cicerelli and been on
yeah,
voices.com.
Saskatchewan was not a TV center. They didn't have TV stations really, except for the news. They
Sure.
didn't have a big, even radio thing. There was no such thing and still isn't for animation there. So it wasn't an industry that I could find work in, and I wanted to work in the industry. Now, pay to play happened because his wife really wanted somewhere to do it from home. And I also wanted somewhere to do it from home because of where I lived. And I found a guy on the internet. I might have said this last time, but he said that he was the only guy on the internet doing voice acting because the internet was brand new. And I
Oh
was very
yeah,
lucky to be
sure.
a part of the internet at that time to learn it from the ground up. And they had something called ICQ. And ICQ was the chat program at the time where people were
Right.
starting to connect all over the world. And I'll never forget in broadcasting course, our creative teacher told us that one day you're going to be playing chess with someone across in another country, and we're like, yeah, okay. And sure enough, this was the birthing of what was happening.
Sure.
Now when Alex created it with Voice 123, Alex was a I forget what his actual background is, but he's a technology expert. That was his expertise.
Right.
He was not a voice person, so
Sure.
everything was based on stats. So it didn't become a very personal site. It just became the first ever of you could do it from home. And for
Sure.
me, that was a godsend because
But
now
not
I could
not
still
only
live
from
where I was.
home, but it opened the playing field to where you didn't have to have this ridiculous demo and that's really good and all of the training behind you and stuff to go in and hit LA, Chicago, New
That's right.
York. It was like that you could just go on, pay the price, and you're on.
Yeah,
You
and then
know,
how is someone like me going to get into an LA, a New York, or Chicago living in Canada? I'd have to marry
sure.
someone. I tried that, it didn't work. And so it's like, how do you get in? And so we had to have a
I thought we
solution
weren't going to
there.
talk about that, Deb. No,
Even now it's funny because people from America will say, hey, can we get work here in Canada? And it's like, well, not really. There's not enough work to go around for us. Never mind, sharing that with the rest of the world. Now, it doesn't mean that the rest of the world can't voice here. It's just a lot of stuff is built on tax credits in Canada. There's not
sure.
big budgets. There's not big corporations that put a lot of money into stuff. And you don't sue people as much out here. It's not as easy. There's so much differences between the two countries, much like any other countries that happen. So for me, the online world allowing me to work at home in my pajamas was my godsend. Like that saved my life because I got to enjoy what I did every day and I didn't have to leave my house. And I'm of the rare breed, I think. I'm not saying that there's not more of us, but I have enough drive to work from home. I have enough drive to follow through. I don't get lazy. I'm very driven. And I traveled all over the place to get training, to know what to do. But I really cared about learning from the union talent that were very giving at that time and very sharing at that time, to not demean the industry. And that's what the concern was the demean of the industry. And now when we flash forward, as great as that is, all of a sudden now other pay to plays came in like voices.com, who actually at first I thought was okay because I really enjoyed Stephanie and David, but
Mhm.
I learned that they were a corporation. They
Yeah.
weren't a heartfelt person in the industry, and
Well,
I
the problem
respect
with
them,
all the
but
pay to plays, the difference is there's not an agent has a vested interest. An agent is not
exactly.
getting paid unless you get paid. If you
Yeah,
do, it's 1,000 plus 10. You're getting 1,000. They're getting 100. They're going to push like
worth their
hell to get you
time. Yeah,
5,000, so they make 500. The pay to plays, no, you sign up to be on there. And
yeah,
again, if you've got 200,000 people paying $500 a year, they don't care if you ever book anything. It's like
at
there's your
all.
bank.
It's
The
all
interesting thing.
subscription, right? Just like a Costco, they make all their money
Well,
off a
to me, the
subscription on the
interesting thing with
product.
a lot of those is it seems slightly suspect, and that I've worked with a lot of people that have shown me copy that they've gotten and stuff. There is no way in the world that you have enough people coming in to support 200,000 people as far as product, which makes it feel very suspect that maybe some of the copy is not necessarily on the. I've often thought, there's a room somewhere where they've got college students under the threat of death and NDAs that, write this copy and, kind of, and I mean, I don't,
Right,
I know that that's another urban myth,
of
but,
course.
at the same time, I don't know how you
And
support
I
that.
feel that there is, I'll tell you why, because I think the majority of work that you get on pay to plays that people don't understand is corporate. It's
Mhm.
not
Oh
really a
yeah.
ton
Oh
of
yeah.
nationals. There is the odd nationals that are gonna go on there, but most of those national companies are going through ad agencies that are going through union talent likely,
Sure. Oh
or
yeah.
at least going through studios to get the proper talent that they want or casting. They're actually hiring a team, whereas you look at the pay to plays, there's a team people of working in the corporate office for the pay to plays. But I don't know where Voice 123 is right now, but I know before Alex had let it go and sold the company, they weren't making a lot of money. It seems like they should be, but they weren't triple dipping. They weren't double dipping. They were charging there was no
But
premium
there were
at
other
the
companies that
time.
were obviously,
There was
yeah.
lots
Sure.
of other
Oh yeah.
companies that were, and now there's a lot of unreputable pay to
Oh
play
yeah.
sites, which is really
But
sad
it's the
because it
same thing
took
with everything else
what
with
could have
poor
been great and
people.
turn it bad.
All of the voiceover scams and this stuff with people. Oh, and I got this thing, and he says, "Oh, it's great," and and they're going to rent a local studio and do that. And it's like, it's heartbreaking because
It is
somebody that's starting out. Oh wow, it's like getting a scratcher, and
exciting
you
to them.
scratched it and went,
Yeah.
wow, look, I. $500, and then you realize this isn't a real scratcher; it's a fake one they bought in Chinatown as a gag
Yeah,
bet
of
or
course.
something. And it's
Of
like,
course. Yeah.
and it's really it's like if half the people that took all of the effort to to do all the wrong stuff did the right stuff, they'd probably be wealthy
Take it
beyond belief,
somewhere
and
else.
it would be
Yeah,
legal,
true.
but
Well, I
the
still believe in knocking on doors instead of emails and the internet, and I think that the generation now, the newest generation of voice talent coming in, I think they're gonna have lazy careers. And I think
Mhm.
that's sad because, I remember my daughter when she was looking for a job and she was like, "No, it's gotta be online," but it doesn't all have to be online. You can go through picking up a phone. You can go through
Sure. Oh yeah.
walking in and meeting people and learning stuff. And I think that
Well, it's
it
interesting
changed
just
a lot
talking to
that way.
somebody on the phone, you can actually open up a much
So much.
better line of
Yeah.
communication
Yeah.
than you can internet. Why and email, the problem with, and that's again another thing that's bad about the internet and all the social sites is that everybody edits everything they say. I don't
Yeah.
know, I want to say that. And it's like rather than just off the cuff and go, and hey,
Yeah.
if you say something a little blues, oh, it's so what? It's
Yeah.
you're human.
Well, and let's
It's
add
not
on
like,
top that
oh no,
I'm
you
sure
know.
you're in the same boat as me. We get over 100 emails a day. So imagine the clients, imagine the prospects that you're trying to go after. They're dealing with hundreds of emails a day. So you're just one in 100. You're not one in a unique bunch. And so people are so stuck in this fake placement of digital technology that
Mhm.
they don't know. Like I think of if the computer, if someone hits the internet button and just shuts that off one day, which is someone can do that. There just is that powerful of a button that it stems from one hub. If someone shuts that hub down, say it's a terrorist thing, whatever it is, how does the world survive at that point? And
Oh,
people are
no doubt.
not prepared for a bank to shut down its power grid for
If
a
you've
day.
ever had a situation, excuse me, where, your phone doesn't work,
Yeah.
you're like,
I don't know
well,
anybody's phone number.
what's so and so's phone? Or, I don't know.
Even
It's
my
on
own
the
daughter.
button.
Oh my
Well,
gosh,
yeah.
I don't remember phone numbers.
No, and
So
it's
bad.
it's very true. And so
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons the power of voiceover conferences, it's not, don't ever think you're going to go to any of those and book jobs, because
Yeah, it's
that's
not
not
for
going to
booking
happen.
jobs.
But the
No.
camaraderie,
Yeah,
it's kind of nice to get out and talk to people that are just as
it
crazy and
is
weird as you are for
beautiful
doing
to meet
this,
like minds.
And I think that portion of it is really, really nice. I think you can garner some information, but
Yeah,
again, that also breeds, there's so many, it's not hard to vet somebody and look and see.
yeah,
The difference is, oh, well, and it's like, for me, the coaching thing, that's not my primary income by
yeah,
any
yeah, me
means.
neither. Yeah,
But I love, at this point, I'm an old guy, and I love that pay it forward kind of thing. It's like,
yeah,
no, I'm more than happy to tell you. I love it when you'll get people that argue. Well, that's not, and it's like, then you do that's what you're paying me for, as
yeah,
information,
of
and to
course.
kind of guide you through this. And it's like, it's fine. I mean, and
You
I
do what you got
realize,
to
yes, the
do,
work,
but here's what
but
worked for us. Yeah,
well, and it still does. And it's like, it's just, you understand how to approach things, what to do, what that's about. And, regardless of who you end up going with, that you believe in, that, coaching or a demo or whatever it is, vet them, check it out, make sure, is this
yeah,
somebody that really, they're not
cares
just
about
trying
the
to hustle you
results.
to get some cash, but they know
Yeah,
what's going on, and they really want to,
mm,
get this going and see what's happening, and really help you out. Because for me, it's much more exciting at this point for me to see somebody else's success, and
yeah,
to get an email going, oh man, I've been there, I've done
I
that. It's
know.
like, I'm
Feels
good.
good.
I'm not, so
I
it
feel the same way. I feel like I feel like I get a hand in their journey, and that makes me proud. And I'm probably for you as well. I'm not sure because you grew up in a very valued industry for you. When you're in the industry in LA, it's very valued. It's not $100 here, $25 here. Will you work for free here? And so because you did, I'm not sure your journey in coaching, but for me, I was casting as well, and people kept always asking me, how can I do this? How can I do that? And so I was volunteering it for the longest time. But I'm a host. I love to host people. So I was buying fruits and vegetables and coffee and tea and
I,
having them come here and talking for hours at a time and realizing, okay, I can't keep giving this away because I'm busy voicing. I'm too busy.
quite honestly,
And you have to value
the
that.
reason I started with that, believe it or not, was when I got divorced. She took my butt to the cleaners, and it was like,
Yeah.
at that point, kids in college and
Gotta add
studio,
something.
and
Yeah,
it
of
was like, and
course.
I have a loft in Old Town Pass. I mean, it's like, good Lord, I mean, it's,
Gotta pay bills, man.
the,
Yeah.
you break even is, $70,000 a month. It's like,
Yeah.
so, and it was like, but it's like, well, but I have a lot of information. So I started with come into the studio,
Yeah.
and we would do stuff in there and get them, that kind of thing. Well, I still have people that go, well, I really want to do this in person. There's not many people that do that anymore, because, and I always make it clear to them, coming in does not mean you're going to be in one of the studios. Those are booked
Yeah.
with clients, that are
Yeah,
doing, so we can
exactly.
go in a green room or an office, but then you're dealing with phones ringing. And to
Yeah.
me, online gives you much better one-on-one. It's
At
like,
one
I
time.
can see, I
Yeah.
can do, you know what, let's try this, let's do this. And I'm not a stickler. I don't, it's like, oh, it's an hour. Okay. It's like,
Yeah.
no. And
Yeah, of course.
if you've coached with
Done
me,
what I'm done.
I will be yours forever. If you have a
Yeah.
question, hey, ask. And
I
well, it
found
does get a little worrisome when it's people that you have not worked with at all, that you don't know, that you've had, internet, hey, likes, oh yeah,
yeah,
whatever. And it's like, yeah, I was just wondering, can you give me a recommendation letter for, an agent? Was like, no, I'm not
I
gonna,
can't.
I won't do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for me when I started, I because I was on board with the internet when it started, I was very, very lucky to be very early in the internet, not the industry, the internet. And so when I was traveling to LA, I would ask to record my training and they all said no. And I feel that that
Of
was an
course.
insecurity because they were worried I would take the information. Like, there was coaches that would never train me because I was coaching as well. And so I was on Skype already at that time and going like, they're crazy, man. We can be doing this without the cost of me having to travel. Like, I want to talk about cost for a second because back in the day, for me, when I set my studio up, it was about $6,000 for me to get a home studio at the time. It was newer thing.
Yeah, I wish I
Hardly
would have
any
had a home
clients
studio because it cost a bit more than that.
well, I know for you, it was even more, was what I was gonna say, but
Oh,
at
yes.
the same time, you were a professional studio at that time too, so you would have invested tens of thousands of dollars more than I did. But now people are complaining that, it really you can get it set up for $1,000 minus your computer system, and that's actually amazing. Let's add on top of the fact, for me, I had to travel to get trained. I had to
Sure.
travel to LA, I had to travel to San Francisco, I had to travel to everywhere. And so that was costing me tens of thousands of dollars to get the training I got.
Oh, sure,
Now you're
sure.
looking at, 100 to 200 to $300 for a coach, and that seems like a lot for them, and I understand that, but I think the problem with the education side is people's mindset is I want to make $300 an hour voicing minimum. That's what I want to make. That I
Mhm.
want to be a $300 hour voice now. Okay, that's like saying I want to be a lawyer and a doctor, even though they make more now. But let's go apples to apples from back in the day.
Yeah.
You might not work full time in voice acting at $300 an hour, but you still need a college education to get you there. And that's the problem with this
Well,
industry.
anything
There
you
is
want to
no
do, there's
college.
an investment. And
There's an
the
investment.
whole entertainment industry, I could do that, whether it's
Yeah.
acting on camera, whether it's
I
dancing,
talk.
singing, yeah, all that. Yeah, it's like, well, I can do that. And it's like without any clue as to the actual the subtlety
Yeah,
and honestly, even knowing who the players are and what the
yeah,
game is. And it's like,
yeah,
so what does this mean? What is jargon?
yeah,
It's like, okay, good. So they're not going to give you that, but they'll give you 3% of the tail, on the tail end of this and da da da.
yeah,
But it's not scale, but but it could be a good deal if this happens. Da, and I also want this and this and it's like that. And you need a wave, a 24-bit. Can you do a debit? And it's like, and you just immediately know it's like doing promos. You build in an internal clock, and a client goes shave off a tenth of a second. Wow, how do you do that? And it's like your brain just goes, okay, and it's just and that just comes but
yeah.
like anything else, you can't just sit down. Here's my crappy mic that I got at Costco,
My
in
USB
my
mic.
free program, that I downloaded, which is
There
great,
you
and
go.
doing this. And
Yeah,
it's like it's a different thing, and
yeah,
it depends on what level if you're happy doing that and doing, a couple of audio or something, that's fine. There's nobody's going to
yeah,
get on you. It's
of
the
course.
same thing as being on Fiverr. Am I a fan? No, but if that's what you need, good for you. Then go
Yeah,
for it. But
it's
realize
everybody's
that
business.
you're going to sit at that level. That's not going to change until
That's
you
right.
decide to change your game plan, your business
Yeah,
plan, equipment, training, data, so that now you step it up, and in turn, the financial part will step up as well.
yeah. And that's again where we've gone into this change of industry where I feel blessed to be like I would have rather been blessed to be in an LA talent. I would have rather had that be my journey in the past. But I'm blessed to be a what I call a veteran of the online world. And that's where my home sat. But I do see this again, naivety of people that think that it's just really easy to get in there and make this kind of money, and it's just not. The job is fun. The job can be easy if you're really good at it and know what you're doing, but there's also a lot of scrutiny that happens. Directors aren't happy. You
But
have to
the other thing too
redo
is, even a great
things.
example is even coaching. Practice. Don't assume, okay, we're doing 1 hour a week and that's all I'm doing, and the
Yeah,
rest
keep
of the time
doing the work.
and then come back
Yeah,
and sit down, because you're doing exactly what we said we shouldn't do. You're doing
yeah,
it again.
yeah,
And
exactly.
it's like there's
Repeating
no,
bad habits.
and what it is, honestly, it's creating muscle memory.
Yeah,
It's no different than when you first learned to drive. You're white knuckle, oh good, and setting up mirrors and stuff. And now no, you just get in the car and go, you look in the mirror and you go. It's not, because it's muscle memory. And it's the
yeah,
same thing with this. You just look, you know where you need to go. You breeze the company. A great example is, researching the company. Look and see, what is this about? It doesn't take that
yeah.
long. But we
I
have a
know.
tendency, oh, there's my highlighted lines. That's what I'm reading, and I'm done. And it's like, well, there's more to it than that.
Yeah, so many people say, "Well, you don't want me I can do it all in one take, right?" And it's like, "Well, really, and as if a client's there, you're not gonna be doing it all in one take. Does that mean that they don't want you to get it all right in one take? Yeah, sure, but they're gonna piece this line with this line with this line." I find it's a very lazy society now that just wants it to be easy. And as much again as we can be loving what we're doing, once you're in it, it can become second nature to you, but
Mhm.
it's not an easy industry. That's why it pays what it pays. It
It's
wouldn't
true,
make
and
the
the
page if
key
it
is,
wasn't easy.
believe in yourself, be your own best champion,
Yeah,
because nobody is going to have the drive that you have.
that's
If
right.
you're lucky enough to have a mate, whether it be a husband, a wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever that may be, that is supportive, that's awesome. But sometimes that can be quite a hurdle when it's going, well,
Right.
I really need to get this new, I'm buying a teal. I'm going to, well, how much? It's about 1,000. Oh God, well, you can't,
Yeah, I can't
now,
afford that, hon.
luckily for
Yeah,
me, because I've always had this, so it's like it's never been it's like, nope, I know what I'm getting, and that's what I'm getting,
yeah.
but I
But at the
know
same
for a
time, like you
lot
were
of
saying, you
people,
went through a divorce and had all these other extra
oh
bills,
yeah,
the kids
oh
in
yeah,
college. And I think that's very relevant for people to hear is again, I'll call it the LA market, where there can be, six-figure salaries, high six-figure salaries, their expenses are also in that range too.
sure, oh yeah.
So everything is apples to apples at some point. The more money you make, the more money you're spending, and you have to keep up to that. And so you can't ever let that go. Nobody can just go, "Oh, I'm me, and work's just going to come to me."
But the
We
key,
have
the
to
key
work at
too with
that for our
that
whole
is
career.
stay true to yourself. Just realize that when you make more money, you've got more zeros on the check, but you're still you. You're still
Still
gonna,
you.
not like peanut butter or like peanut butter, and you're still gonna stub your toe and go, oh God, I feel like, oh boy, I've got the poops, whatever. I mean, you're
Yeah.
still human,
And we all
so
had to make that change at one point where we said, "Okay, I'm gonna make this full time. I'm gonna
yeah,
give up this security blanket that I have working at wherever I am, and I have to make that change."
sure.
Everybody has to go through it. So those of you that are going through it, don't feel sorry for yourself. This is a part of the process. And you might struggle, and having struggle in this industry will teach you how to get better and drive you further and further so that you
And two,
can be where you
and
wanna
reach out.
be. Yeah,
I'm fine. Especially during COVID, when people were going through a lot of mental things and stuff, because it was very isolating and weird. And oh my God, and there was this dark cloud over everything.
yeah,
It's like reach out and go, hey man, I just,
right.
this kind of sucks. I'm having a shitty day. Whatever. It's like, hey, what's going on, man? Talk to me. And I've got a couple of people that I still would just not. I don't charge. I just check in and say, hey
Yeah,
man, how
just
you doing?
chatting.
Just checking on you. How are things going? Oh, okay, well, cool. Hey, you know what? Why don't you try? Tell you what, I've got a thing here I can do. There's a discount code for this side thing. Try this. It's $99, but I have a
Yeah,
feeling you might do a lot better with this. Try it and see what.
yeah,
Oh
of
man,
course.
thanks.
I tell talent
Whether it's
all the
work
time
or
that sorry, I tell
no, no,
talent all the time that they have to get used to staying in contact with their team. And
sure,
so I say to them, "Okay, I'm telling you, contact me and keep emailing me at least once a month so that you're top of mind for me because I'm not going to get paid to cast. So therefore, when jobs come my way, it's whoever's
sure.
top of mind for me."
Oh
And
yeah,
I'll say that and they'll be like, "Yep, it'll be me. I will." And every one of them stop at some point. So they're not still reaching out and realizing that, like, to me, I'm offering them a beautiful gift. I'm willing to take up my time to be there for you, but they still think that's invasive, or they still think, or they're still lazy in it, or whatever. But I think it's so important they set up a routine that keeps them in top of mind of people's
sure.
of their team.
That's really important, because a
Yeah,
lot of the time I will get people, go, oh yeah, I got this. If it's someone that I know that I've worked with, yeah, I'll, say, I'll talk to,
exactly. You'll remember.
and go, hey, maybe we should look at blah, 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 and bring them in. But a lot of the time, yeah, play the demo. But the problem is, I don't know how you want. I have no idea. I've never worked with
Exactly.
you. I don't know. And again, it's like a marriage. It's like
Yeah,
I'm expecting this from you. You're expecting this from me. But if you're not holding up your end, then think I look like an idiot.
exactly.
And
Yeah,
clients, so it
exactly.
can be a
Well,
very
look at how
touchy.
many people come your way. How can you remember everybody? You can't,
Oh yeah,
just like the clients. The clients are in the exact same position. They might
sure.
love working with you, but by the time they finished with you, they got a month in and now they've worked on a million other jobs and they've forgotten all about you. They might have loved you. So it's so important people stay on top of that stuff.
Good.
Awesome conversation today. Thank you, Mark.
Yes, absolutely. It was Nitty and Gritty. This was
Yes,
good. This was
yes, we will. And we'll be
and
bringing in some guests soon, so be tuning in because we're gonna get some clients in here to tell you their side of the fence and also some other behind scenes stuff because we think that's very important to
we're
the
gonna be kissing lots of butt that day. I'm telling you.
We're going to be real. We're going to be nitty and gritty with them. Is what we're going to do.
Yes, we are. Absolutely.
Until next time, everybody, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I'm Marc Graue for Nitty Gritty with the lovely Deb. See you guys next week. Thanks, you. Bye.
A podcast with no boundaries that tells it like it is.
This ain't your mama's show.
This is the Nitty Gritty.